Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Not Your Typical Book Club. Today, Rami and I are going to do part 2 of Chris Voss's book, Never Split the Difference. And I'm actually pumped about this one. I think Rami is the same thing. We're talking about it before coming on air. There's so much good stuff in there, and especially I think the second part had a lot of stuff that you can apply right away. Like Absolutely. It's very, very practical.
Yeah.
And let's just jump right into it with the most important word in negotiation, which is
fair.
Fair.
It's the most powerful word in negotiation. And, he talks about to get great leverage in negotiation, you have to persuade the other party that they have something to lose. And he had a great example. I think it was in this particular chapter to really never split the difference. If you're arguing with your wife, she wants you to wear black shoes and you want to wear brown shoes, well, you can't just meet in the middle, wear one black and one brown, because that doesn't work out for anybody.
It's everybody's worse off, essentially.
Yeah. So that's part of chapter 6 called Bend the Reality. And he goes, he talks about a lot of the same stuff throughout the book too, and how to essentially not split the difference, anchor a number, and he teaches us how to anchor numbers.
Mm-hmm. I agree. And everybody has this, when you're in a negotiation, everybody has this feeling that you don't want to be treated unfairly. Right? Like whatever you're doing, you don't want to be treated unfairly. Right. And sometimes you're even going to do stuff that are going to be negative to you just because you don't feel like the other party is being fair. Right. And he used the Iran example. I don't want to go into the whole Iran debate, but the example kind of makes sense. So he mentioned that because of all the sanctions that Iran has gone through from the other countries because of their nuclear program, it cost them hundreds of billions in economic, dollars that they could have made that they didn't. And Iran knows that. But because they feel that they're being treated unfairly because other countries are doing the exact same thing but don't have those sanctions, they don't want to stop their nuclear program, which is not giving them much compared to a lot of stuff. But because they're being treated unfairly to their own eyes, they're going to be a lot worse off and just keep going.
Exactly. They should have had Chris Voss on their side.
That's it. Exactly.
Chris Voss was playing for the opposite team at that point. Was he part of the negotiations of that? Does he mention that?
I don't. Not that I've heard. But that's just to say that we're all emotional.
Yeah.
And the other example that he used with his students, which I just found fascinating, he just mentioned, so each of his students, let's just say Chris Voss is right here. We're 2 students, and then he's saying, I have $10. I have to offer you an amount. Yeah. It can be 1, 2, 3, 10, anyway, and you have to decide if you accept or not. Right. If you accept the offer that I give you, whether it's $6 or $3, we both get the balance. So if I offer you 3, I get 7, you get 3. If you don't accept my offer, Chris gets the $10, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So everybody says, we're going to split the difference just to make sure that we're, it's fair for everybody. Some are going to be 6 for you, 4 to me, just to make sure that you say yes. He argues that the only rational answer is 9-1. I give you $1, I keep 9, because I'm making the decision to offer you something. I want to keep as much as I can. Exactly. Let's go to 9. Right. And if you're not accepting my $1, you're going to get 0. So the only rational answer is you take my 1. But most people are going to say no to that 1 because you're going to say, no, you're screwing me over. Give me 5.
What the best part about this book is that, yes, he talks a lot about the criminals that he negotiates with, but the way we can actually use these examples in business. And it actually reminded me of when you play poker with your friends. And it comes down to 2 people. And, the chip leader owns maybe 70% of the chips. And then the second place, it's head-on poker, owns maybe almost 30% of the chips. And then the second place would say, you know what? Let's split the difference. Let's call the game. I'll take 30%. You take 70%, right? But that's a losing. That's a losing mentality from the first place guy. The guy that owns 70%, because the odds of him winning the entire 100% of the pot is a lot more likely if you just keep supplying.
Because it has more leverage.
Exactly. So never split the difference, especially if you have leverage. Another example is when you're negotiating your salary with an employer or negotiating your commission with a client. Instead of saying, I want this price, you can automatically say something like, well, so-and-so, one of the big 5 banks, or so-and-so, one of the big 5 companies, are offering between the ranges of 130,000 and 170,000, instead of saying, I want 130,000 or 170,000,
Yes.
right? So by sort of shifting it away from you, making it look like you've done your research, that's a good negotiation tool.
And that's the perfect example of bending their reality, because by going with the range 130 to 170, they thought that 130 was already high, right? But now we're at 170. They're still thinking 170.
Yeah.
So their reality becomes like, holy, that's a big number. But then when you come up with your 130, they're all excited.
You're
excited
anchoring
about
at
it.
170.
Exactly. Yeah.
Another thing he mentioned is, when you talk numbers, talk odd ones. Like another way to bend the reality is, instead of saying 70,000, say $73,435, right? So that, again, they'll think, well, this guy actually he's done his calculations, he's done his research. We're more likely to offer him that now than before.
I don't know how many times I've received an offer and it was like $527,052. And you're like, what?
Specific.
Like, where's the $52 coming at, right? Like, but it makes you think. There's a reason why the 52 is there, and he's right. Like you're more prone. Like the anchor is more solid when it's an odd number. Like
it just takes you off track. I feel it takes you off track. It shifts your focus elsewhere, and then it gives some sort of leverage to you, or to the other person, right? Yeah. Where we go from there? You want to jump to chapter 7, or you want to?
Just before, there was one thing that I loved about the fair part, and that's how to use because when somebody tells you that all they want is something that's fair, or I asked them, what are you looking for in this transaction? Oh, I want a fair deal, or they're trying to put fair on you, that you're being unfair. Right. And if you believe that you're being unfair, use one sentence that I think is gold to try to put this back on the other person. Yeah. And sentence is, okay, let's stop everything and go back to when I started to treat you unfairly. So how do you answer that?
Yeah.
Well, when you said that, because if you believe you were treating this person fairly, there's no answer that you're going to get. So the fair part is out of the question now, right? So that's one part that I just it was so good. Like he has sentences like that I just love.
Well, people are so they want to feel like they're treated fairly, and the definition of being treated fair is to avoid a loss. And most people are more afraid of a loss than a gain.
Yes.
They would try to avoid a loss more than.
Which is a problem when you negotiate.
Yeah. Right. Chapter 7, create the illusion of control. How to calibrate questions to transform conflict into collaboration. When he was mentioning the Haitian negotiation, was that in chapter 6 or chapter 7? I can't remember.
I think it was chapter 7.
Okay, so the story goes like this. He received a call from Haiti. I think it was like a prince in Haiti or something like that. And his aunt was abducted by these pirates, and the pirates wanted $150,000 to release the aunt, right? And then later on in the negotiation, they found out that the reason why they want this money, which they had asked for on Monday, the reason why they wanted it by the weekend is because they wanted the party. So the more they extend the negotiation, the less amount they will probably give to the pirates.
That's it.
Because they wanted to party on the weekend. They'll take $5,000 to party. You don't need $150,000 in Haiti to party.
No. And it's a good point. And now I remember it's chapter 6 because because of that, I had written down, find their motivation. Right. And then when you find their motivation, you're able to understand what they're looking for. And I had an example of this for me that happened when I was 23 and I wanted a big sales manager position. Right. I was interviewing and I was super excited to be there. I'm not even sure why I was invited, but you know what? I was there. And the one thing that I learned at the beginning of the interview was that this general manager, wanted to hire somebody that he could groom, right? And in my mind, I'm like, I'm the perfect person to groom, right?
Yeah.
So my answer throughout the interview was I'm looking for a mentor, right? But the only reason I focused on that is because I had his motivation.
Right.
I knew what he was looking for. Yeah. So I was able to say, like, I want a mentor. I'm ready to listen to you. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, when you're telling this to your employer, I want a mentor, they accept to mentor you. They're invested in you doing well, right? Because if you're not doing well, they're failing. So,
right. Okay. Yeah.
So I like finding a motivation for anybody that's in a negotiation, like your counterpart. Yeah. It's gold just because of that.
It's like figuring out what they are trying to accomplish and then what you're able to give up for that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's jump back to chapter 7
absolutely.
again, I guess. Calibrated questions. I wrote it down here. Have the power to educate the other party on what the problem is rather than causing conflict by telling them what the problem is. Okay. Some of the questions that he mentions. What about this is important to you? How can I make this better for us? How would you like me to proceed? What is it that brought us into this situation? How can we solve this problem, etc.? So he is looking for collaboration at this point.
That's correct.
Work with me. I'm not working against you. Work with me. Let's figure out a solution.
Well, he's asking for questions that won't end by yes.
Right?
Because
open-ended questions.
Open-ended question, not short answers, because the more open-ended the question is, the more this person's going to answer and divulge some information. Because you're using those questions, the calibrated questions, especially at the beginning when the other party is trying to, control the negotiation, and you want to get your control back by getting them to tell you something.
Right.
What this does is, so you ask the question starting by a how or what.
Yep.
In order, in a way that you're asking for help. How can I make this better for you? How can I, you know what I mean? And so you're asking for help. They will answer the question. They will find solutions to try to make you do what they want to do, really.
Right. Yeah.
But really, you're just giving them the illusion of control because you're pointing them to the direction that you want to go.
Okay.
And that's how we get more information.
Yeah, absolutely. It really makes the other party also feel in charge, right?
Which is the whole goal.
Yeah. And instead of, but in reality, by asking those questions, you are the one that's in charge of the conversation. And that's what you're trying to accomplish.
Right.
These are key questions. How am I supposed to do that? Mm-hmm. Last week we talked about that, when we were discussing commission. How am I supposed to do that? And that worked magic. Mm-hmm. It actually worked magic. And I feel like I use a lot of these things for when I'm in negotiation. Especially now in a hot market, you're negotiating all the time. So if you are a realtor, this book is great right now, especially, right?
Yes.
Think about all the negotiations that are going down, and to win a bid, you have to be a master negotiator almost.
Well, and you have to negotiate, be willing to do stuff that you wouldn't be doing before. Like you got to generate more info. You got to know exactly. Like, so if I'm coming in, there are two types of negotiation with a multiple offer. Like if I'm going in and there's 15 other offers, I need to ask those questions to the other realtor, so I have all the info, so I can put my offer the best as possible, right? Yeah. And then the other part too is sometimes I know the market. Well, most of the time, should anyway know the market more than my client. So if I want them to help them to put the offer like it should be to help them work, sometimes I'm negotiating with them, right? I have to be able to ask the right questions for them to understand that this is what we got to do to make it happen.
In fact, you need to know the market better than anybody.
Well, that's the whole thing. Yeah. That's the whole thing. Like you can't win in this market if you don't know it. It's not going to happen.
The more information, the better it is, essentially.
On everything. I agree.
So chapter 7 was kind of short.
It was kind of short, but it was the first, second, I guess, would bend the reality that I thought that you could really apply what he was saying. Yeah. Like the questions, like, oh yeah, I can use that. Yeah,
it's very simple.
Yes.
But it doesn't necessarily mean it's easy to execute. You still have to know the right questions.
So I have an example. Because of this book, I believe that a friend of mine might have gotten a job. Okay.
Okay.
So I have this friend that's a lawyer, and he called me just before his interview and asked me like some advice on how to, like, he didn't know what questions to ask the interviewer. He read online, I have to ask questions at the end.
Yeah.
What type of question? And I had just read about the how can I succeed in this company, right? And this question is just so. All three people in front of him looked at themselves like, oh, great question, and started talking, asking and telling him how to succeed. So two things happened there. He looked like he wanted to succeed.
Right.
And then he was able to understand everything that they want. Right. So after that, the interview was his because he was focusing on the stuff that they had said.
That's
and that
absolutely
question,
brilliant. Yeah.
that question was brilliant. Just 100% from this book.
So you gave them advice from his book.
Yeah.
You should have gave him a book.
Well, yes. They that's one thing that I do to a lot of clients.
You give them,
I surprise, like if I talk with a client about a book, I just go online and get it delivered to their home instead of mine, with a note on it, and then randomly they receive the book and it's like, oh wow, and then they give me a call, and I do that all the time. Like once or twice a week, I send a book to a client. Which
goes back to chapter 6, where he actually recommends that you send gifts or you bring a gift to the negotiation table. Let's jump to chapter 8, guarantee execution. This is where he talks about liars, how to spot a liar. And he talks about the 7-38-55% rule. This is extremely hard to do. I tried to wrap my head around this, but essentially what it is, 7% of a message is based on the words, 38% comes from the tone of voice, and 55% from the speaker's body language and face.
Which I like, this has been out there for a little while. It's not the first time I heard that, but I never believed it until I read this book.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Why?
So because he ended at the end with, if the word or tone don't match the body language, your counterpart is either lying or uncomfortable with the deal.
Right.
Which, like I always thought I focused on the words, but now I realize that you can say something and don't mean it.
Exactly.
Like
of course.
I knew that, but when you really put it in theory, now I realize, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Like how many times did you talk with somebody and you're like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, right, let's do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Totally different. Yeah. Same words, but I could say, well, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, the word is just a way of saying this, but if your body language doesn't align, it's not true.
And then you can say something like, it seems like you're uncomfortable with this.
Exactly.
With that exact
voice. And the other reason I love this chapter is because he also put out the rule of 3. Yep. So when you feel like the body language doesn't align with the tone, you have to get them to say yes 3 times. So I asked you, for example, okay, are you okay with that deal? And then you say yes. And then, okay, so just summarize, just want to make sure I get this right. We're going to put this offer in, and then after that, that's the closing date that you'll have, and we'll make it happen.
That's right.
That's right. And the goal is to get at that's right. Yeah. And then you calibrate another question with, how are we going to get there? And then you explain to me how we're going to get there.
Right.
It's very hard to lie or to fake enthusiasm 3 times in a row. That's pretty much what he's saying. So by getting you to confirm 3 times, it validates it.
Okay. That's tough, though.
Tough to do.
Well, you also have to, like, here's the thing. These examples and these tips he gives us in this book, they're effective, I'm sure. But they require a lot of practice. Like, you need to be witty. Like, you need to be quick on your feet. You need to know what to say, what tactic to use.
And you
need to know everything.
It's repetition. You have to do it a lot and kind of grow into it. And when he used his son as an example, like in the acknowledgements, like it's the first book that I actually read the acknowledgements at the end, and I'm like, man, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So like he realized that stuff like this was effective when his son, after growing up with his dad always negotiating with him and with other people, his son used empathy with the school principal to get out of trouble. And then Chris was like, huh, okay, this is working, right? So it's So it's but his son grew up into it.
I wonder if you can use this book to negotiate with your children.
100%. I agree. Not even 99%. 100%.
Yeah.
Yes, but use how questions like. Ask your kid to explain the rationale, and then he's not going to be able to, and then it's going to move on. Like it's just, I'm sure. Like the only person I don't want that they read the book is my wife. Oh, because then she's going to use it against me,
right?
And I won't be able to use it with her. You know, I
can ask my son, how am I supposed to do that? He would actually tell me exactly how I'm supposed to do it, right? So it's kids are witty. Kids are smart. When they want something, they'll do whatever it takes. He also talks about the Pinocchio effect. On average, liars use more words than the average person. Mm-hmm. Than if they're not lying.
Because they need to come up with, they're scared of not having it right, so they need to come up with a good reason.
And they tend to use the third person pronouns. And obviously, the first thing this reminded me of was I did not sleep with this woman. Who was that? Bill Clinton.
Sorry.
Right? When Bill Clinton I was watching a YouTube video about liars and how to spot a liar. I'm not sure. I just went through a rabbit hole. And Bill Clinton was one of the main examples. Yeah. Right? And they were talking about how he used too many words. They were talking about how he never called her Monica. He just called her this woman. He never personalized her, right? So that's what this particular segment of the book reminded me of.
It's good. It's true.
Because you're seeing it in real time. Like you look at politicians and you see it in real time. And, when I think of liar, I think of a politician, right? Automatically, that's what I think. Politicians.
At least bending the reality. That's what they're doing at a bare minimum.
Right.
Yeah.
Like look at our current prime minister. He speaks. He just says random words all day long, all day night. Like he's not. He has a whatever it is. I'm not very political, but he says a lot of words. Mm-hmm. He doesn't cut to the chase. Just tell us what we want to know. Tell us how it is, and then move on.
Answer the question.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Right. So he can come out to be. He can seem to be a liar because of the words that he uses. And when you're in a negotiation with a client, when you're in negotiation with another realtor, whatever it is, in a business negotiation or with an employer, just use as little words as possible to provide as little information as possible, especially if you're negotiating.
Well, you also have less risk of making a mistake and saying a lie that they know is a lie. Right? Like if we're having a conversation and I'm explaining why what I'm saying is kind of true, where we're going to go, and I slip in some bullshit that you find in the middle of that because it was too long. Well, I'm dead. It's fine. I lost.
Now, if you are in a negotiation and you do realize that the person you're negotiating with is lying to you, what do you do?
After reading this, calibrated questions that's gonna force you to explain your point more in detail, which you're not gonna be able to.
Right.
Because if I go straight at you, you're going to be on the defensive side.
Right.
If I call you bullshit straight away, and there was an example of a him that they realized that it wasn't the case. Like, when the bank robber, they realized that it was they knew who the bank robber was.
Right.
And the bank robber would bullshit that no, it wasn't him.
Right.
Instead of confronting him,
they
asked calibrated questions, up all the way to he admitted that it wasn't him. Right. But he never said, Chris, we know it's you. All right. Yeah. But at one point, he couldn't avoid it.
I mean, calibrated questions could be almost in any situation. You can use that. It's such a great tool. Mm-hmm. You want to jump on to chapter 9?
Bargain hard. One thing that I loved about this is the 3 different negotiating style.
Yep.
So the analyst, the accommodator, and the person that's assertive.
Okay.
Have you ever done DISC personality profiles?
No.
So, okay, well, it's kind of the same way. So that's why for me it was very familiar. But it's just the different, like D is somebody that's more assertive. The I is more out there, talks a lot. The S is super, it's like reserved, shy, and the C is like the analyst, right? So there are tools to recognize these people, and these people like to be dealt with differently. Same thing with the analyst, right? For example, the analyst, while he wants data, he's going to research a bunch of stuff, and he needs info. He's going to negotiate for weeks. Doesn't matter. Like I'm not going to say yes to anything until I have the best info. So we talk. I'm an analyst. I take a pause. I'm thinking. Right. You're the assertive style. For you, the assertive style sees a pause. It's my time to talk. Right. And then you keep on coming and coming and coming because you want to direct the conversation your way. Right. But really, I'm just like, let me think. Shut up. Exactly. You know what I mean? So, I love the distinction between the three, and you don't see often. Like a lot of times,
What's the third one again?
The accommodator. So the accommodator. So he says analyst and assertive are like 25%. Yeah. And accommodator is 50%. The accommodator doesn't want big confrontation. We're trying to make things happen, even though compromise we've learned is not a good thing. The accommodator sometimes by fault will try to compromise to get a deal to happen. Right. But at Harvard they did a research on and the accommodator results in more victories than the assertive style, even though you would think the opposite. Yeah. But the accommodator is a lot more amicable. He's likable. This person is going to you want to deal with an accommodator, not an assertive person, because it sucks, right? Yeah. You're being told what to do. And what we've learned in this book is that's not a good thing. So but the only issue with the accommodator is that they just talk too much. And then if you're an accommodator as well, and we chit chat so much that nothing gets done, right? Or you're an assertive and you ask me stuff, I'm going to reveal it very quickly. So you just have to. So the accommodator is good as long as you're conscious of the conversation and where it's going.
Okay, that's good stuff.
Lots of stuff, yeah.
It's also important. What this book made me realize is the words that come out of your mouth and the way you say those words are extremely important in negotiation. And like just the way you shift the conversation. He talks about, taking the price off the table, making it more personable. And at one point, and this happens all the time, and I've actually used this tactic a couple of days ago when a client was telling me what their bank is offering them. And I said to them, well, your bank seems so great. What are you doing here?
Yeah.
Right? So that essentially shifts I know it sounds a little condescending, and obviously you say it in a more polite manner, but it makes them realize that, listen, I'm giving this guy a shot. We should probably listen to what he has to say.
Well, and I think the way that you phrase that is very important. Like this person tells you how great your bank is. If you're labeling the bank as great, they're offering this, he's going to say that's right. Then you answer with a calibrated question saying, like, I understand all that, but what brought you here in the first place? Yeah. Like, maybe not why you're here. Yeah. Because why is confrontational. Yeah. What brought you here in the first place is then they're gonna tell you, well, I'm looking for maybe a better rate. I'm looking for somebody that's gonna fight for me. I'm not just a number like a bank, like a mortgage broker would do, right? So it's all stuff like this. Then bingo, you know why they're here. Exactly. Like it's
not only do you know why they're here, they know why they're here.
Yeah.
Right?
Good point.
Because they just said it out loud that I'm here because I want to get a better interest rate. I'm here because I want better service. So
instead of them being here because their dad told them to come.
Exactly. Right. And that's another good way of something I've never actually thought about. The Ackerman model, he talks about that in the Bargain Hard chapter of chapter 9. This won't work in real estate in this market right now. You set your price, offer 65% of your price. Then there's like an entire formula of this and that. Go to 85, go to 95, whatever. Nowadays, it's not even, price is huge, but it's what are you offering me? Closing dates, what are you doing?
Well, price is huge, but it's a one-time offer. There's no negotiation. If there's 15 offers.
They never ask you to revise the price?
Oh, almost never. Not when there's that many offers. If there's, it would depend. So sometimes it's just like, okay, so you have the better price. However, I need this closing date. Will you do it? Or we love that you have no conditions. We love that your closing date accommodates us. We just need a few thousand more. It's more a yes or no question, just because of the uncertainty. And you know what? If you're saying no, there's 15 other offers. Like it's just, and
like they have leverage.
It's
hard to negotiate with that much leverage.
Yeah, and the issue too is that a lot of time now we're starting, so listing agents do that all the time. We're underpricing the home to get 15, 20, 30 offers. Christian did an offer a couple of weeks ago. There were 42 different offers. 42 offers on one property, right? So like the price is your offer, you put your best foot forward and then hope for the best. Like it's just at one point, it's totally different market. Yeah.
Makes it tough. How are we doing on time? Are we good?
What, 30?
Okay, let's jump to chapter 10. Find the Black Swan. Have you ever read The Black Swan by Nicholas Taleb? No. Okay, so The Black Swan is a book about essentially missing. Don't assume something does not exist until you've seen every single part of it or thing, right? So like essentially, they thought a black swan did not exist until somebody spotted a black swan. And now the black swan does exist, right? Mm-hmm. So if you've seen 100 white swans, does not necessarily mean that there's no black swan.
Yes,
that's what the book is about. He talks about the economy. It's a great book.
Yeah. So essentially, what he's saying here is let what you know guide you, but not blind you.
Yeah.
Right. I had an example. This with a divorced couple was getting divorced, and we were trying to sell their home. And I had an offer. It was a hard home to sell a few years back, and we got an offer. It made sense and all. And in my assumption, I assumed that both of them wanted to sell, because it's just you're here to sell the home. Both of them want to sell, but this guy was still in love with her. And as soon as that was finalized, it was completely over. There was nothing else. Right? That was the last thing that was left to do. So he didn't want to sell. Right? So I was bringing him something and just assuming it would happen. Yeah, we have a good deal. But he was always putting it forward, like pushing it until I realized, oh, no, my assumption is wrong. He does not want to sell.
He still loves her.
That's it. So now we have to address that instead. Right? If I would have realized that earlier.
You would have adjusted earlier.
I would have dealt differently.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
Would have presented stuff differently.
So what ended up happening?
Well, it ended up happening. Like it's whether he wanted to or not. Like it was under court order to sell. So it is what it is. But at one point, it was very hard. Like there was nothing I could do at the end.
Right.
It took me too long to realize that. And I've dealt with a lot of divorced couples. It's too bad. It's kind of the business we're in. Like it happens.
Of course.
But and after that, I don't assume that both of them want to sell. I'm trying to meet them separately to understand their needs and what they're going through, and then
that's tough.
Yeah.
So basically, a black swan, in a negotiation perspective, is reading between the lines, finding the ulterior motive. What's hiding? What is it that you really want? The Haitians wanted the party, man.
That's all it was.
Right? They just wanted the party. And any other. The Iranians, they just wanted fairness, right? They wanted to be treated right. Like we're all humans. So finding what is fair, finding what is being empathetic, listening, right? And finding that black swan can go a long way and give you the leverage.
And in order to find that black swan, you can't assume that the other person on the other, your counterpart is the same as you, that they deal the same way and that they want the same things. Like if I negotiate with you and I'm just like, I just want the deal to happen. Like my buyers want to buy a home. They're super excited. We need to make it. I can't assume that all you want to do is get the home to sell right away at any price, right? So you have to remove all your focus to be, you can't focus on one thing to be able to find that black swan.
Well, exactly. You really have to think outside the box. And especially in my business, what is it that you're doing what are you doing with this property? Like, what's your ultimate goal with this property? Are you keeping it for 3 years? Or are you selling it after 5 years?
Is it an investment?
Once I understand exactly what it is they're doing, maybe it's not even about rate. This mortgage may cost you more if you break it with after 3 years. if you go with the wrong lender at a better interest rate.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a great book, man.
Yes. Yeah. It's time to rate that.
Yes.
I
don't rate any books anymore until I have a conversation on this book club, because it does help me change my perspective. That's why this book, having a conversation about a book, is completely different than just reading the book.
I agree.
Right? Like, read the book and have a conversation with someone about it. Listen to the book club. It just gives you a different perspective.
Because I can rate this on the information that was in there, which I found that was great, and you can rate it on how how the read was enjoyable, or how the English language is well written in that book, right? Like, we all have a different perspective.
I love the audiobook. For this book, I like the audiobook more than reading it.
I don't think that's ever happened to me.
It's happened this time.
Oh, yeah?
It's never happened before.
Okay.
I think it's the narrator that just made it so appealing to me. It's he had this really cool voice.
Mm-hmm. I agree, and at first I didn't like the voice, but it grew on me.
Yeah.
Like, by chapter 10, it was pretty good. Yeah, no, and he had like the tone of the voice was good with the different situation. No,
exactly.
I agree, but I don't. I prefer just reading. Like, it's just sometimes it's just your time constraint. You have to do a little bit, but like this book I could read 50 pages without stopping. Like, it was that good.
So, if there's one thing you took from this book, what would it be?
Calibrated questions.
Me too.
For me, that was the biggest thing.
Me too.
And it's a hell of a game changer. I wish I bought this book in 2017 because I was told, like, read this book. It's awesome.
Right.
And it's been on my shelf since.
Yeah.
And I regret that I did not read it before.
Calibrated questions is also huge for me. Also mirroring, but mirroring is really hard to do. It's just Chris Voss he teaches businesses how to negotiate. So it's not just how to negotiate with the criminals. It's really how to negotiate in business situations. And we're both entrepreneurs. We use a lot of his tactics. So calibrated questions is my number one.
Same.
I'm going to reveal my
Same
answer.
here. I just wrote it down.
I'm giving this book 4.7.
Okay. Not a bad rating.
Yeah.
Is that one of your tops? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. This is my number 2 as well. After the compound effect, I gave it 4.85.
Oh.
Yeah. It was that good.
Yeah.
It was that good. Biggest thing for me is I can take that book and apply it to my day-to-day
What did you give the
life.
compound effect? A 5?
5.
Wow. Okay.
Well, I'm biased because the compound effect changed my life. It was the first book I read that was about personal development, and I would not be the person that I am today with that. I would not be doing this podcast with you today and these guys if it wasn't for the compound effect. So you can't top that for me.
Good.
For me.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah.
Pick up this book. Get the audiobook. It's even better. Or maybe it's not, but it's a great book. If you're in business, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're looking for a job, if you're negotiating a new salary, this book is the right one for you. 100%.
I agree.
I love it. Chris Voss is a great author. He has a lot of YouTube videos as well. Not a lot, but I'm not sure if he has a TED Talk. I think he might.
He has. He has
a TED Talk.
Yeah.
He has a TED Talk as
Very
well.
good.
So look into this guy and read this book. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.